Enjoy early access to ad-free episodes each week when you subscribe to Wedding Planning Podcast Premium in Apple Podcasts. Enjoy the show. And I'll say quickly, it is, again, such an honor to walk beside you during this incredibly special time in your lives. And thank you very much for including me and the Wedding Planning Podcast in your plans. And with that, let's dive into today's workshop on hiring a wedding planner and/or day of coordinator. Now, you might be beginning to wonder if you need to hire a professional wedding planner. And before we review a guided list of questions to help you make that decision, let's do a quick overview of what a wedding planner or a wedding coordinator, as it's sometimes called, what this person does, and some very general price points that you can expect. And of course, please note these are very generalized definitions and pricing estimates, and you should always agree on a clear contract before hiring any wedding professional, wedding planner included. First off, we have day of planning and coordination services. If you're concerned about having help on the actual wedding day with timing, all the random logistics, and having a point of contact who is not you or anyone in your wedding party, ideally, and you're just looking for a helping hand, then a day of wedding coordinator can be a huge asset. Price points vary greatly based on experience, location, time of year, and a ton of other variables, but you can expect to pay probably anywhere from about $500 up to a couple $1,000s for this level of service. And then on the other hand, we have full service wedding planners and/or event designers. Now, this is the wedding planner who's going to meet with you regularly throughout your engagement. They will handle research, booking, follow-up, and in some cases, they'll even design the overall decor, the flowers, the tablescapes, and overall aesthetic of your wedding celebration. A full-service planner will likely guide you through a variety of options for different vendors and services, and will even follow up with you and see things through all the way up to your wedding day. Much like day of coordination services, price points vary greatly based on a planner's experience, location, time of year, etc., but you can expect to pay anywhere from a couple $1,000s to $10,000 and beyond for this full service level of planning. And finally, many wedding planners will offer a variety of services that fall between these two service levels that I just described. So if this is a vendor you're interested in potentially including within your plans, don't be concerned that you have to choose one or the other. As you're researching different options, any potential wedding planners who you are considering should have clear pricing and packages either listed on their website or available upon request for you to study and carefully consider. You'll definitely want at least one face-to-face meeting with any potential wedding planner before making a final decision, before putting down a deposit, and before signing any contract. And we're going to review that in much more detail in just a few minutes. And now that we've reviewed the bare bones basics, let's explore whether or not this is a vendor you even want to include in your wedding plans. If we're right here, right now, and the thought of earmarking hundreds or even thousands of dollars for a coordinator is giving you extreme budget anxiety, then fear not. Hiring a professional wedding planner of any service level is definitely not a requirement for hosting a well-planned, well-executed, meaningful, and beautiful wedding. So to get started with the next portion of our conversation, let's go over some specific questions to consider if you're on the fence about whether or not you want to work with a wedding planner. And the first question to ask yourself is a professional wedding planner within your budget? Simple enough, right? Again, you can expect to pay anywhere from at least $500 for very minimal day of coordination support, and anywhere from a couple $1,000s way on up from there for more hands-on help throughout your engagement and throughout your planning process. Another question to ask is, does your venue include staff or a staff member to coordinate setup and cleanup on your wedding day? Many all-inclusive venues do come complete with an on-site coordinator, in which case, if that's you and that sounds like your venue, you're probably all set in terms of the day of services. But of course, I'll side note here, this is definitely something that you want to double check and confirm with your venue on. Please do not assume that just because a venue is, quote, all-inclusive, it does automatically include day of coordination or support. So definitely something to make a note of, to ask your venue contact next time you speak with them, or if you're in the researching phase, that might be a question that you want to prioritize as you start looking at different venues. If you're using a non-traditional or a non-inclusive wedding venue that does not include any on-site help, you will absolutely need to arrange for someone, and this can be a friend of a friend, a family member. You need to have someone designated to be your point person and to assist with the wide variety of things that are going to come up on your wedding day. So for example, this includes vendor management on the day of, setup and takedown, directing guests, directing the wedding party, supporting the bride and the groom and the wedding party and their families, trash and restroom patrol. Not limited to these things, but there are endless numbers of things that need a point person to be tending to on the wedding day. And equally as important, you do not want to be in charge of any of these things on your own wedding day. So designating a point person is critical for an organized and enjoyable experience. Important question to ask yourself if you are considering whether or not you would like to hire a planner is, how much time do you have available for wedding management in the coming months? By this point, you've probably realized that wedding planning can be a little bit time and energy consuming. So if your jobs, your family, or any other personal commitments are not going to allow for much time or mental space in the coming months, then maybe a partial service coordinator simply to manage vendor check-ins, follow-up, payments, and timeline management, to name a few. Maybe that's right for you, and maybe that would be a really, really helpful thing for you to have in the coming months. And then next up, ask yourself, do you want to be super involved in the ongoing planning process, follow-up, and ongoing management of all the moving pieces that consist of your wedding celebration? Some couples are more hands-off and would prefer to have someone else manage all of that ongoing follow-up and all of those smaller decisions that maybe are not that important or that critical to you. That is perfectly fine, and a full or partial service coordinator, or even enlisting help from your family and friends who do want to be really involved, either of those are great options for you. And at this point in our conversation, you have maybe decided absolutely yes or absolutely no, one way or the other, if you know that you want or do not want to hire a wedding planner. If you're still on the fence, or if you have decided that yes, you absolutely want to hire a planner, then keep listening. And if you know that this is a vendor that you absolutely do not need, then you're welcome to pause this episode right here and move on. Some notes before signing a contract with any wedding planner or coordinator. You're here because you prioritize living in integrity with your top values, and you want that to be infused throughout your wedding celebration and throughout the entire experience of your engagement. You should approach researching and hiring a wedding planning professional with a rock solid mindset and a complete shared vision of your core values and your priorities. This is very important, and I cannot stress enough that your wedding mindset and your values cannot be outsourced to even the best wedding planner on the planet, because those things are unique to and stem from within you. Very, very important point. Please do not look over that one. Next up, your chosen wedding planner should make you feel comfortable from day one. It is critical to meet in person, face to face with the person who will show up on your wedding day before signing any contracts or making any verbal commitments. It does not take long to get a positive or a negative feeling about someone when you meet face to face, and your wedding planner should be welcoming, energetic, professional, and they should be excited to meet you from the very moment that you connect with each other. You should feel that you are always being listened to, respected, and that your opinions are valued. So is this person making a sincere effort to learn more and to understand what you really want on your wedding day? Or are they simply shoving vendor lists and canned scenarios at you without really understanding your vision and offering to help make it come to life? Does the person you're interviewing seem organized, collected, and professional during your in-person meetings and any phone calls? It is literally this person's number one job to keep your wedding plans and your wedding day organized. So if they do not appear to be organized throughout your communications, then that is a deal breaker. Also, a question to ask is, have they ever worked at your specific venue? If the answer is no, that definitely is not a deal breaker. However, you do want to be sure that they have a very clear understanding of the location, the layout, and any other major wedding details that you have in mind up to this point. Another important thing to consider is, are they willing to work with vendors that you select, or do they require that you choose from a set listing of vendors who they recommend? I don't want you to get stuck into having to choose from a set list of vendors down the road when that's a very easy question that you can clear up before you commit to working with someone. And then next, very important as well, how many meetings, phone calls, and emails are included in your package, and be very specific. That sounds kind of nitpicky, but in the last weeks and days before your wedding, if you have, quote, run out of communications with your planner, that's a problem. So very important to understand that. If you've seen a price listing and you know the package pricing, ask, are there any fees that are not included in those listings, in the proposal, or in the contract that you should be aware of? Perfect example based on our last point. If I need an extra phone call with you, what's your rate hourly? By the half an hour, how do you charge that? How do you charge me for email communication? How do you charge me if we need to do an unexpected walk through the venue because of some emergency circumstance? Very important to understand all of these things. And then finally, ask for recommendations from past couples and do online searches, exhaustive searches on Google and social media channels for any posted feedback that can be really, really valuable in guiding your decision. And now let's take the spotlight off the planner and shine it on you, because as clients, you have some responsibilities and guidelines to follow too in order to make this relationship with your planner work. The first one is to be prompt with replies to any questions or requests for information. Things with your planner and working together will go so much more smoothly if your planner isn't chasing you down, leaving multiple messages, and letting days or weeks go by between making important decisions. There are timely communications, timely follow-up items, so it's really important that you are prompt in answering any questions or requests from your planner. And then next up, also very important responsibility of yours is to be respectful of your planner's time and to honor the guidelines set forth in your contract, which I know of course you will do. Hiring a planner to assist with your wedding plans is definitely not a ticket to be 24/7 texting and emailing and expecting an immediate reply from now until your wedding day. I think that goes without saying, but I added it in there just in case. Today we're going to sort out some misconceptions and frequently asked questions about wedding planners and day of coordinators, which you might also sometimes see referred to as DOC, Day of Coordinator for short. Our goal today is to get really clear on the difference between a wedding planner and a day of coordinator, and also to determine whether or not you really need to hire a professional to help you with your wedding plans. When I got married, this is a confession, I kind of thought you had to have a wedding planner. And I laugh looking back because in my mind, the way I saw it, it was some wedding law that to plan anything, you had to hire a wedding planner. So I couldn't even pick up the phone and call caterers for information and quotes because you had to have your wedding planner do that for you, which of course is so silly and so not true. And my beliefs, in case you couldn't guess, have come a long way since then. And not only were my beliefs about how you have to, in quotes, have a wedding planner, not only is that, of course, silly, but also on top of that, it's ridiculous. And a professional wedding planner was completely not within our wedding budget. And as it turns out, of course, totally unnecessary. I wasted a ton of time researching and interviewing planners before I realized that A, I didn't have to hire anyone, and B, John and I had all the tools we needed to plan our perfect wedding day between the two of us. If you've been listening to the show for a while now, you've probably heard me tell stories of some of those interviews with planners. They did not go well. And side note, huge shocker here in all sarcasm. Obviously, none of the wedding planners I interviewed ever mentioned to me, hey, by the way, did you know that you could actually just do this on your own? Thankfully, I came around to that, but it took a lot of wasted effort and a ton of stress to get there. So I'm here today to tell you, hey, by the way, did you know that you could actually just plan your wedding on your own? Yes, it's true. Flash forward to today and this podcast. I literally created the Wedding Planning Podcast so that any engaged couple could tune in and use these episodes and use the tools we review in the weekly shows to plan your own wedding. No professional or pricey wedding planner required. So huge spoiler alert before we dive in, I definitely do not think you have to spend thousands of dollars to hire a professional wedding planner. Now, with that said, I also know that there are countless amazing wedding planning professionals out there. And for some couples, it's a really smart investment. We'll get into all of that much more in today's show. Can my best friend be my bridesmaid and my day of coordinator? This question comes up a lot. And unfortunately, I don't recommend having your closest friends or family take on the wedding day of coordinator responsibilities. I'm not saying it can't be done, but I am saying that for the maximum enjoyment and minimum stress of everybody involved, I really don't recommend it. There's so much going on the wedding day that needs to be actively managed. It needs a designated point person on top of it at all times. And in most wedding situations, it would be pretty much impossible to effectively stay on top of everything and enjoy the wedding as a guest, much less as a bridesmaid who needs to be in certain places at certain times. Imagine trying to take photos with your wedding party and having a crisis going on in the background that your bridesmaid/day of coordinator needs to be handling, but you only have a certain designated amount of time to get those pictures done. You see where I'm going with this? It's a conflict of interest, and I just don't think it works out well. Here's a great option for you, though. If your best friend is a professional coordinator and she has a ton of experience doing this and she knows exactly what's going on, sit down with her in the months before the wedding, and the two of you can create a really airtight list of all the things that are going to need to be managed on the wedding day. And you can also probably sit down with her and make an airtight timeline that everyone can follow. And if she's donating her time to you as a gift, maybe she can be the one in the weeks leading up to the wedding to be making all of your vendor phone calls and doing all of that follow-up work. I'm just saying that on the actual day of the wedding, I would much rather see you hire someone to do that, and bookmark that thought because we're going to get to that in just a second, or have you designate someone who's not as close to you and who's not involved in the wedding day as a best friend or as a bridesmaid. I think you'd be much better off. So your day of point person shouldn't be your best friend. It shouldn't be your bridesmaid. And let's go ahead and extend that ban to your closest family and any of your closest friends who you really want to be able to just enjoy, relax, and hang out on the wedding day and not be working. Okay, so all of that said, then what are some other options? Let's go into that. Other people to look to who could fill this role: a trusted friend. Again, a friend is fine. I just don't think it should be your best friend who's also in the wedding. So a trusted friend, a trusted neighbor, an acquaintance, a friend of a friend, maybe even a coworker. Think down your social circles. Do you know someone who has project management experience? Is there someone who you work with in your marketing department who's in charge of events for your company? Personal story that I'll share with you. We had wedding day help from the events coordinator at my husband's school, and she did a phenomenal job for literally a fraction of what a professional day of coordinator would have charged us. And she didn't even really charge us per se. We insisted on paying her something, which we went back and forth about for a long time because she wanted to do it as a gift. We wanted to compensate her in some way, so we kind of met in the middle there. But it ended up being a perfect solution. My husband, John, teaches at a private high school, and they host a ton of fundraising events, charity events, donor parties, and her job is literally to make sure all of these events run smoothly. And it definitely didn't hurt that she's been doing this for over 40 years, 4 decades of experience in managing events. So she could have literally showed up on our wedding day and run everything with her eyes closed, and she did an awesome job. I'd be willing to bet that you know someone like this, maybe not with 4 decades of experience doing events, but I bet you have a friend who knows someone or a friend of a friend who knows someone. Ask around. It doesn't hurt to post on Facebook to all of your friends and family, hey, we're looking for someone to quarterback on our wedding day. Anyone have event management experience who's available to help on January 15th? Go ahead and throw it up and see what people come back with. So weighing someone like I described who helped us with our wedding, who's been an event management professional for decades, And then put her next to a day of wedding coordinator who's been doing their job for exactly 2 years and is charging $100 an hour. The choice is pretty clear, right? You know by now from listening to this episode that you absolutely have to have someone help you out on the wedding day. So if it can't be a professional and you don't want to go that route, then a friend of a friend, an acquaintance, all of these categories are great to tap into to get that help that you're going to need. Another viable option, if you can't find someone who you have a connection to either directly or indirectly through a friend, another option is to go the stranger route and hire someone locally from a website like Craigslist or TaskRabbit.com is another one. You've probably heard the term gig economy thrown around in the news. We're living in a gig economy where it's totally normal for people to drive their cars around like taxis and make grocery deliveries in their spare time to earn extra cash. And you can use this gig economy to your advantage when hiring people to help out on your wedding day. I jumped on the website TaskRabbit.com as I was researching this episode just to see what some of the options are. And there's literally an entire section dedicated to event staffing. It's perfect. Another website you could try is Fiverr.com, and I'll leave links in today's show notes where you can go to learn more if this is an avenue that you're interested in exploring. In most of our communities, I'd be willing to bet that there are completely competent people who are eager and willing to work for $15 to $20 an hour, doing really simple event management tasks like directing people where to park, or serving appetizers, or staying on top of trash and restroom management. I would never belittle these jobs or the folks who do them. They are critical to making sure events go off without a hitch. But to illustrate my point further, let me point out that these are all very low-paying jobs. A parking attendant, a waiter, a janitor. So why would you pay someone with the word wedding in front of their title $50 to $100 an hour to handle these little things for you? It does not need to be a wedding coordinator. It can be any person who you trust to pay 15 to 20 bucks an hour to handle it for you. And I think there are plenty of people out there who are willing to do that work for you. The bottom line and the very most important point of this entire episode. So if you're multitasking, come back to me. Whether you hire a professional day of coordinator, ask for a favor from a neighbor or an acquaintance, or hire a complete stranger through a website like Craigslist or TaskRabbit, it is critical that you assign someone to be your wedding day point person. At the very least, you're going to have vendors to manage, decorations to set up and take down. You need someone directing guests in the wedding party and someone on trash and restroom patrol. And you do not want to be in charge of any of these things on your wedding day. So designating a point person is absolutely critical for an organized and an enjoyable day. Woo, sorry to hammer that home so many times, but it's very important. We're going to move on now. Next question, day of coordinator advice to share or things I may not think of. My first meeting is coming up soon. So going into that first meeting, your coordinator who you've hired will have, if you've hired one, okay, if you're not in that camp, then bear with me for a minute here. If you've hired a day of coordinator, they will have their own process for collecting all of your vendor contracts, everyone's contact information, giving you checklists, and creating the wedding day timeline. Make sure you ask them what, if any, additional information that they're going to need from you, when they need it by, and the best way for you to get it to them. I'd also suggest before going into that meeting that you sit down and give your wedding day timeline some really deep thought. So spend a few minutes thinking about the wedding day itself. Some things, for example, do you want to do a first look with your future spouse before the actual ceremony? Is the photographer going to be photographing that moment? Do you want to schedule in alone time with your new spouse sometime before the reception? I really think you should. We've talked about that in prior episodes, so scheduling alone time is important. These little nuances will impact the timing of everything else on the wedding day. So it's really important that you communicate those wishes to your coordinator so that they can include them in the master timeline and there aren't any surprises on the wedding day. If you have an airtight timeline and you wait until the wedding day to say, oh, by the way, we decided to do a first look, so we need to carve out 45 minutes for photos before the ceremony. That's probably not going to work. So do it ahead of time, and that's a great thing to put on your list for that first meeting with your day of coordinator. And this next one is kind of a 2-in-1. I'm going to share 2 thoughts that are very closely related. First, I've interviewed a couple of local wedding planners, and unfortunately, it doesn't look like this is going to be something that's within our budget. Help! And closely related to that, do we really need to hire a wedding planner? I've had close friends do it with and without a professional planner, and I'm on the fence about spending $1,000 to $2,000. Well, if I thought you had to hire a wedding planner, we literally wouldn't be here talking today. I created the entire podcast to coach you through planning your own wedding, and I definitely don't think that anyone has to hire a dedicated wedding planner. Now, with that said, before you spin into overwhelm mode, let's stop and take a few moments to get specific about what it is that you really need help with. Why do you want to hire that wedding planner? If it's to research and choose vendors, or make decisions about decorations and colors and favors and menus, and all of those details are what's really stressing you out, these are things that your loved ones can help you with. So don't isolate yourself and don't feel like you have to do it alone. Your friends and your family know you best. And if you can sit down and make a list of what you really want help on, and then assign those items to specific people, in most cases, you'll be met with a tribe of loved ones who are more than happy to help you out. Now, if you're just looking for someone to help out on the wedding day itself, so someone to direct your vendors, answer guest questions, collect the gifts and the personal items at the end of the night, put up decorations, like we reviewed earlier in today's show, I would highly recommend, number 1, thinking about friends or acquaintances who might donate their time as a gift to you. Or number 2, looking for some local folks willing to do hourly work through a website like the ones we mentioned earlier. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Thank you always for your support of the Wedding Planning Podcast, and I can't wait to pick up again next week.